Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2016 Ford F350, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Airlift dual path wireless compressor kit. Now, one of my favorite things about this system being wireless, it gives us the capability to make our adjustments outside of the truck. So it's really going to come in handy whenever we have a load on the back. You can come outside and kind of see how you're sitting. And if you need to increase the air pressure to level yourself out, you can do that right here. So say if you make an adjustment, compressor will kick on, raising the back end of your truck. You might say, okay, I need to take a little out or add a little more. You're able to do that very easily with a few clicks of a button. And that sure does make life a lot easier, being able to inflate and deflate your bags by the push of a button, as opposed to having to manually inflate your airbags with the traditional style Schrader valves every time you want to make an adjustment. You're not going to have to worry about bringing an air tank around, finding a gas station, something like that. With the kit, you still are able to maintain your manual inflation valves if you want to. That way you do have a backup device. But in my opinion, that's what these style Schrader valves are best for, is that backup. So this is what the whole compressor is going to look like. And this is definitely one thing that really separates it from some of the other compressors available. It's really compact. Everything is right here in one package. It's going to all be included and built onto this bracket, which allows you to mount it pretty much anywhere. And especially in these newer trucks, it's really challenging to find a spot to mount something. With this one, your options are a lot more open. It's where you want to mount it and find a spot that's best for you. This bracket even comes with a U-bolt. That way you don't even have to drill in some cases. I have personally dealt with a handful of different types of wireless compressor systems, and honestly this one impresses me the most for a few different reasons. How responsive it is, how quiet the compressor is, and how fast it fills the bags up. So we'll go ahead and just fill it up to 20 psi. Just a few seconds, the compressor is going to kick on, compared to some of the other style ones where it's really delayed. You might have to wait 30 seconds or a minute. You're unsure if it's even working or not. It's really loud, and so on. With this one, you can see it put 5 psi in the bags relatively quick. The compressor is going to work with any brand of airbag. Compressor doesn't care what brand it's hooked to. It just does one job, and that's to fill them up full of air. Now, it can fill the bags up from 5 all the way to 100 psi, and it's virtually going to eliminate maintenance too. So what I mean by that is just about every airbag manufacturer does require a minimum pressure in their bags. And so if you come to our remote, we're gonna have these 3 buttons, 1, 2, and 3. And those are actually presets. So what I like to do is preset number 1, have that be my maintenance preset more or less. So that would be a number, usually the minimum amount your airbags require when you're not hauling anything. It's usually 5 psi. Then that gives you 2 more to choose from. So 2 in our case is 20 and 30, and you can customize them to whatever you like. And that's a really nice feature for those of you that tow multiple different types of trailers, whether it be work trailers or anything like that. Let's say if you know one particular enclosed trailer, you know your truck pulls really good at 20 psi, you set it up for that. You'd simply just have to push 2, and that will kick the compressor on and set it to that pressure. I'll say if you're pulling a triple axle trailer, large car hauler, something like that, you know a little bit more pressure works good. You simply just hit your 3rd preset, and you don't even have to think about it. You just have to figure it out that one time, save them, and then you have them from there on out. So this is a dual path compressor. So what that means is it's going to give you a lot of adjustability. So most of you would just use this for the rear airbags, at least in my experience. And so what this can do is adjust each side independently if you want it to. So like right now, you can see the small arrows here in the back of our truck. That means any adjustment we make, it's going to fill both the bags up to that pressure. Let's say if we have an off-center load or something like that, if you push over on the left side, you see the left arrow just on one side. That's going to allow you to set the pressure up or down just on that side. So we'll give it a second to let it fill up over there. Same thing for the right. You got that ultimate adjustability. And what you can also do is set it up for front to back. So some guys will have front airbags if they have a heavy snow plow or something like that. And what you can do is run one of your airlines up to those front airbags and adjust the fronts, as well as be able to adjust the rears, all with one remote. So what's really cool about this too is you're not going to have to solely rely on the remote to make all of your adjustments. Say you get home from work, leave this in your pants pocket, throw it in the laundry. Next morning you hop in the truck, get to the job site and realize you forgot your remote. What you're able to do is connect to the compressor via Bluetooth using your cell phone. So that's just a nice feature to have and a nice backup way to be able to adjust your airbags. So nice touch too, not only our remote but our phone can also do this, is give us diagnostics. So if you push down on the center button on our remote, hold it for a couple seconds, it'll pull up a menu. And it gives us a few options here, settings and kind of your basics. If you go down to Troubleshooting and hit that, it'll pull up this menu. And since everything is working properly, it's not going to give us any codes or anything like that. But if you were to have an issue, if the compressor was malfunctioning, or even if you had a leak in the system, this menu would prompt you to make adjustments or help you find the issue more or less. So that's always a nice touch to have in your back pocket if an issue does happen to occur in the future. So overall, I definitely think that the wireless compressor system is a way to go, especially in these newer trucks. Compared to the traditional style compressor systems that have a physical gauge, these newer trucks have a lot going on the dash, and it can be extremely difficult to find a spot to get all that mounted. With the wireless systems, you can either use it off your phone, which is always in your pocket, and the remote doesn't take up hardly any space at all. You're not going to have to worry about mounting this anywhere. You can simply throw it in the glove box, your cup holder, or even in the center console. And because of that, it's just going to make your experience that much better and your life a little bit easier. To begin our installation, we're going to be working on the passenger side of our truck, and we're going to be in front of the rear tires and just behind our rear doors right here in this area. So the first thing we're going to want to do is mount up our compressor. So the way we did this was using the included U-bolt. And so the U-bolt is just going to wrap around the frame, come through the bracket on one side, and it's going to come up to the top side of our bracket and come through too. I'm just going to use a 9/16 to tighten it down. Now you can mount this any which way you want other than two particular ways. You don't want to mount this to where the Airlift logo is upside down, and you don't want to mount this to where the Airlift logo is facing the ground itself. So this face here, you don't want that to face down towards the ground. But with that being said, and now we're in a secure location, we can rig up our air filter. So this is really straightforward. You want to get this up high in a dry area, and what you're going to want to do is find a location. I drilled a 3/8 hole, and this filter just snaps right into the hole. Then you're going to take the short piece of air tubing, push it onto the barbed fitting, just slides right on it. And then you're just going to run the other end of your air filter line to the barbed fitting on top of the compressor. And again, the line's just going to push right over that fitting. Now we can take our air lines get them plugged into the compressor and routed back to our airbags. Now each fitting here does have a particular orientation. So this one here on this side, that's going to run to our left airbag. And this one here on the right side, that's going to run to our right airbag. So to keep it a little bit clearer, I just put a white dot on the right side there and just a little white paint on the airline. That way I can keep track of which line goes where. So to plug these in, they're simply just going to push into the fittings. But one thing you really want to make sure that you do is cut the end nice and clean. So you want to use a tool like this, a really sharp utility knife. There's also tubing cutters available here at eTrailer. You don't want to use a regular pair of snips because it'll pinch it and then it'll create a leak. So we'll go ahead and cut that line. It's a good example of what a clean cut should look like. Nice and flat, no burrs. I already cut this one straight, so I know that's good. And any fittings from this point on that we're going to plug our airlines into, we're going to make sure that we cut them nice and clean. Go ahead and push that one all the way in. Then what you can do is just lightly pull down on it to make sure it's seated. There will be a little bit of movement in the fitting, but that's to be expected, as long as that line don't pull out. Same thing for the left side. And now at this point, you would run them to each individual airbag. So what I did is kind of grouped them together for a little ways. I just ran them up over our compressor, following some of this factory wiring. So I just went over the top here, still following some of that factory wiring. And then once I got to about this point, about even with our rear wheels, I actually went and kind of crossed and ran it towards the center of our truck. So underneath the truck now, the lines are running towards the center of it. Now whenever you run this, you want to be sure to do your best and avoid any hot or moving parts. You can just secure everything with some zip ties. I just dropped it down along through here. Again, securing it to some factory wiring every now and again. Now the side for the left airbag, what I've done is just teed into the airbag with the included fitting. So again, I just cut that line in half, making sure the cuts are real clean. One end of our line comes in into the airbag, and then our compressor line plugs into the T. We're going to do the same thing to the right side, but we are going to need to continue to run our tubing. So here's the right side tubing, and I just ran it down along our frame rail. Just continued to follow our frame rail, and it kind of goes up behind this brace and drops down right here. Kept going over, and what I've decided to do, it's about right here in this area. This is where I'm going to tee in that fitting, and I chose to do it back here because it's not close to our exhaust, it's out of the way. I just feel like doing it back here would be a little bit more reliable. So we can go ahead and grab that T fitting and get it installed. So we'll take our T fitting, cut the existing airbag lines in half, make sure they're nice and clean. The T just plugs into one side. Connects those together. And I'll kind of gauge the amount of line that we're going to need here. This is our compressor line. So about right there. Make sure it's good to go. And we'll just do the same thing here. just like that. So now we can move back to the compressor and take our wiring harness, get it plugged in, hooked up, and ran to the front of our truck. So pretty simple. Plug lines up one way, push it all the way up into place. There'll be a little white locking tab. Push that down. And then just maybe about a foot from our plug, we're going to have 2 wires that are just bare ends. What we're going to do is take the 2 wires coming off of our compressor, and we're going to connect those together. We're not going to be using these pre-attached terminals from our compressor here. What I'm going to do is just kind of judge the length that we're going to need. That way we don't have all this extra wiring. Cut those. I'm going to strip the insulation back. I like to kind of twist the wires, ensure that we have a good connection. Do this for the red wire as well. Kind of shorten these ones up too. Again, strip back the insulation on these. These wires are a little bit thinner, so what you can do is twist them nice and tight. Kind of double them over a little bit. This is we're going to take the included butt connectors and pair the 2 together. Slide it over one end of the wire. And crimp it down. And so these are going to go color for color. So our black wire is going to go to the other black side. And same setup for our red wires. Now once we have these connected, since these are heat shrink butt connectors, I'll shorten that up a little bit. We can come back with a heat source and seal up that heat shrink. And that'll just help keep any moisture, dirt and debris, any contaminants like that from getting into our connection. Now that we have our connections made back here at the compressor, we can route the rest of our harness up into the engine compartment. So this is how I did it. I just went up and over this body mount and just followed our frame rail towards the front. Use some zip ties along the way to keep it secure. Once I got to about here, what I did, I kind of branched off to the right a little bit and went up into the engine compartment. There's an opening here where our firewall is and our wheel well liner. Quite a bit of room to work. You're just going to take that wiring and shove it up, and you should be able to grab it from the top side under the hood. So now under the hood in the engine compartment, here's where our wiring came up. The red and black wire, what we're going to do is hook this to the battery. The pink wire, we're going to run over to the driver's side of the truck, but we'll do that in a moment. We'll take care of these 2 first. What we're going to do with the black wire here is connect this to the negative battery post. So cut it to length. Then you're going to strip back the insulation on one end. Give it a twist. We're going to take the ring terminal here with the blue end on it. Slide it over the bare end of the wire. Crimp it down. And connect it to the negative battery terminal. So if we look right here, we're going to have a 10mm nut. Go ahead and pull that off. Slide over our ring terminal. and tighten the nut back down. Now on the end of our red wire, we're going to connect the included fuse holder. First thing you want to do is open up the cap, make sure the fuse is not installed. We're going to do that at the very end. So we'll kind of prepare this. Cut that fuse holder in half. Strip back both ends. Then we'll twist some wires nice and tight. One end of the fuse holder is going to get the blue butt connector. So we'll work that on and crimp it down. The other end of our fuse holder is going to get the yellow ring terminal. And once we get this put on, we can work on getting the fuse holder connected to the red wire. Judge the length that we're going to need, that way we don't have a bunch of extra wire. I'm going to have some extra to work with, but not too much, so I'll go with that. We'll strip this end back, plug it into the other end of our butt connector, and crimp it down. Now this is a heat shrink butt connector, so we'll grab our heat gun and get it sealed up. We can now connect it to our positive battery post. We'll loosen this nut up with our 10mm, and just like the negative side, put that ring terminal over it and re-secure the nut. So with everything connected up here at the battery, went ahead and used a couple zip ties to kind of clean everything up. Now we can focus on our pink wire. So the pink wire, as I said, runs to the driver's side. The way I got it there is just kind of followed this panel here. You can kind of lift up on it and tuck it underneath. So I did that all the way across. Now this pink wire is going to get tapped into the fuse block. And something I want to mention, you don't actually have to hook this wire up for your system to work. What this pink wire is going to do is anytime you turn your truck's ignition to the on position, it's going to send power to the compressor, and the compressor allows you to have some presets. For example, say 5 or 10 psi, if that's your minimum air pressure you want to keep. So it's going to recognize that, and if it needs to make any adjustments, it's going to do it automatically. If you don't hook this up, those adjustments aren't going to happen automatically. You'll just have to go in and manually do it. But we're going to hook it up today, and we're going to use a fuse tap like this. This does not come included, but you can pick one up here at eTrailer. So I strip back some of the insulation on our pink wire, put that into the butt connector, and we'll crimp it down. Now with these, we're going to take a 10 amp fuse for the compressor. We're going to put the compressor fuse here at the top. That'll push in, and the factory fuse will go here at the bottom. Now I already identified what fuse we're going to use. It's a little tight to get to, so I went ahead and pulled it out. It's also a 10 amp fuse. It is spot 55 in your fuse block, and it's for the rear window defroster. I like to choose something like that as opposed to a PCM fuse or something really important. That way if something does happen and you pop your fuse, the worst thing that's going to happen is you won't have a rear window defroster until you replace the fuse, as opposed to doing your four-wheel drive or your PCM or something. That could kind of put you in a bad situation for the time being. So I'll go ahead, push that in as well, and we can plug it into the fuse block. I want to say too, with these taps, whatever side of your fuse block has the hot power going to it, want to make sure to plug this side of the fuse tap into it. That way the power will run up, go through the fuses and out. If you plugged it in the other way, it could potentially skip the fuses and kind of defeats the purpose. So at the fuse block, the fuse that I pulled is right here in this location. It's in between this 20 amp and this 10 amp. And the hot side will be over here, closest to the outside of the truck. With that being said, we can grab our fuse tap and put it into position. Here's what it looks like once it is pushed into our fuse block. Now that we have everything hooked up, we come back to our fuse holder and install the included fuse. You want to push that all the way down and close up the cap. So with everything hooked up, what we can do now is test it. So we grab a remote, turn our ignition key inside of the truck on, and so we'll raise the air pressure. We'll go to about 30, and with that amount of pressure, then it'll pressurize the system and we can check for air leaks. So we hear the compressor turn on and our numbers are increasing, letting us know that the bags are filling up with air. Now that we have our system pressurized full of air, what we're going to do is take some soapy water and we're going to spray all of our air fitting connection points. That includes these two up here at the compressor. And what we're looking for is bubbles to be rapidly forming. So if you kind of give it a minute and watch them, we don't have any bubbles appearing. So it looks like we have no leaks right here. We're going to repeat this same process for the rest of our fittings. Now if you do have bubbles rapidly forming indicating a leak, you are going to want to fix it. So the way you would do that is let the air out of the system, and then you would pull the line out of the fitting, recut it, plug it back in, fill it up full of air, and test it again. Now the way these quick fittings work is you can kind of push down on the lip of the fitting and at the same time kind of pull back on the airline, and that should pop it out. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Airlift dual path wireless compressor kit on our 2016 Ford F350.